region contains the busiest routes on the national network. It provides transport for millions of commuters every year. The network consists of 1,100 miles of electrified track, which use a 750 volts third rail system. The first electric railway was built in Brighton in 1883, and this still operates today. From the first mainline scheme by the London and Southeastern Railway, from Waterloo to the southwest of London, which opened in 1912, third rail expanded for the next 55 years until 1967, when electrification reached Bournemouth. However, in 1988, the third rail was extended the last 35 miles to Weymouth for the introduction of the 442 units. Waterloo International was opened in 1994 for the new Channel Tunnel Rail Link, or CTRL, with Eurostars operating on the third rail all the way down to Dollond's Moor and the Channel Tunnel. In September 2003, the first stage of the high-speed line was opened between the tunnel and Southfleet, so trains could speed all the way up to the outskirts of London before hitting the third rail. This ended 4 years later in November 2007, with the closure of Waterloo International, and the opening of the line to the new St Pancras International, ending the need for Eurostars to use the third rail altogether. In 2005, the final piece of slam door stock was retired from frontline service, with only the Lymington Pier Heritage services operating. The final 3-6 service departed from Lymington Pier on the 22nd of May 2010. Slam door stock was now no more. 5 train operating companies run the stock that operate on the Network Rail-owned lines. London Overground operates inner London commuter services and has a range of recently reopened lines and the newest piece of third rail electrified track on the network today. Southeastern runs from Charing Cross, Victoria, Cannon Street and St Pancras International to the lines in Kent and East Sussex. Southern runs from Victoria, London Bridge and Milton Keynes to destinations along the south coast from Ashford and Hastings to past Brighton and along to Portsmouth in the west. Thameslink runs from Bedford to Brighton, with extra services to Sevenoaks and round the Wimbledon and Sutton loops. South West trains run from Waterloo to Reading, Portsmouth, Southampton and Weymouth. Each of these train operating companies, or TOCs, have individual fleets of rolling stock with ages ranging from over 35 years old to so new they are still being delivered at the time of this programme. In this programme, we will take a look at the current status of units operating on the Southern Third Rail network, the operators and their routes as it stands in the spring of 2015. Welcome to ZAP. Southwest Trains operates the longest workings on the third rail network, with trains from Weymouth on the Dorset coast up to London. They also provide for the suburban metro traffic in the London suburbs. The 45 Class 444 5-coach to 0 units make up the long-range intercity fleet for the Bournemouth Main Line and down to Portsmouth. They are often run in pairs, with units splitting to reach different destinations once outside London. The Class 450 to 0 is very similar to the 444, however they are only 4 coaches long and operate on the slower outer suburban stopping services. There is a Class 455 high-capacity subclass with no first class and extra seats for commuting passengers. All of the Zeros were built in Austria and delivered via the Channel Tunnel. The 455s are now over 30 years old and operate on the routes around London and out to Guildford. The 24 Class 456 units are a recent addition to the SWT fleet, having been transferred over from Southern for the South West Metro routes and for use on the lines out to Guildford and Aldershot. The 458 Junipers were built by Alstom in Birmingham at the turn of the century. They were delivered as 4-coach trains, but in the best tradition of Southern unit reconfiguration and thanks to the now extinct Class 460 fleet, the units are now 5 coaches. We take a closer look at South West Trains at Weymouth. Very early in the morning, 444034 has the first London Waterloo bound train of the day, the 0555 departure. The 444-0s were brought in to replace the Class 442 units on the Weymouth line, but as the units are 800 kilowatts, which is about 1,000 horsepower more powerful than their predecessors, Power supply upgrades had to be made all over the network so that these units could operate. The upgrades were completed in 2006, which meant the last 442 was withdrawn in February 2007. Like many other trains, this one will join up to the rear of the slower Bournemouth stopping service at Southampton before proceeding fast to London, travelling the 142-mile journey in just under 3 hours. The units were built at Siemens' Vienna factory, and the first unit to arrive in the country was 444011, which was hauled to Eastleigh and then delivered to the new Siemens Northern depot on November the 8th, 2003. The class then underwent slow-speed testing between Weymouth and Bournemouth within line possessions until February 2004, when an 85-mile-an-hour running certificate was issued, and the class began work in Waterloo to Portsmouth diagrams, which do not require 100-mile-an-hour running, and thus allowing the class into service quicker than if a 100-mile-an-hour certificate had been requested. Once that shakedown had been completed, the class gained full 100-mile-an-hour certification and began running to the likes of Hazelmere, Southampton, Brockenhurst, and even some worked Brighton to Basingstoke diagrams. The units have an end gangway connection to allow movement between units within the D0 family. And, like all modern third rail EMUs, a recess in the roof is provided for the installation of a pantograph should it be required in the future. These units also give something back to the network. Regenerative braking feeds power back to the third rail rather than wasting it as heat energy. The units were designed for the longer distance intercity workings, and the 5 coaches offer 299 standard and 35 first-class seats, as well as a mini buffet within a coach, and some multi-purpose areas for storing bags and the like. The seating is 2+2 throughout, with a selection of airline and table seats set in both first and second class, which allows an excellent view of the countryside out of the window. The Class 444 is a progression of the Class 450, which is the oldest of the third rail D0 family, having been introduced in October 2003. Both types can be seen working side by side on a daily basis along most routes. They are technically very similar, although the 444 has the extra trailer standard miniature buffet, or TSR-MB, as the 5th coach, but both have the same traction equipment. The 444 and 450 are compatible for multiple working and can be seen running together on rare occasions. The primary difference, apart from the colour and a missing coach, is the density of seating. The 450 has 60 less seats, but these are in a 2+3 arrangement, and there are less provisions for bicycles and more space for standing passengers. This allows the units to fulfil a more commuter-based regional role as opposed to the 444's express intercity utilisation. Regardless of their status in the pecking order of traction, the 450s can be found pretty much anywhere on the network. 450-026 on a local service at Gould's Coppice, heading for Weymouth. In the London suburbs, on the Hounslow Loop, 450-125 at Syon Lane. (450-101) passes Ulrich Avenue in New Malden. This unit holds the dubious honour of being the first unit to be involved in an accident before it even reached UK shores. It was derailed in an incident in Belgium on the delivery run. In this archive shot we see 450-054 paired up with 450-097 out in the Surrey Hills with a long distance stopper. 54 no longer exists, having been renumbered into the subclass 455s. 28 450Os were modified at the beginning of 2008 for use on the Windsor and Hounslow Loop lines. The first class section was removed and 2+3 seating is the standard throughout. The vestibule area around the doors was also enlarged to allow even more standing passengers. As 4585s become available, the 450s are now having first class reinstated, and they are once again being used for the longer journeys. Nowadays when you buy a train you also get the company that built them to maintain them. For the DeZero fleet this is done at Siemens' purpose-built Northern Train Care, located just outside Southampton. It is a third rail EMU depot without the third rails. Other stock is overhauled at Bournemouth Works on the south coast, or at Wimbledon in southwest London. Since Eurostar moved out in 2007, London Waterloo, although operated by Network Rail, only sees regular services operated by South West Trains. Here all of the operators' types can be seen side by side, well, at least within the same 21 platforms. For the inner suburban or metro routes, the good old Class 455 unit is the South West Trains workhorse. They have been pounding the rails of South London since their introduction in the mid-1980s. South West Trains operates all three of the subclasses of these units, the 7s, 8s and 9s. (455-901) leads 455-717 out from under the South West Main Line at Rains Park as it heads towards Motspur Park. The 4557 is easily differentiated by the former Class 508 coach, which has a different roofline. The 455s tend to pop up in all sorts of places. 727 dives under the South West Main and heads north towards Strawberry Hill. And at Strawberry Hill is where we can compare the rounded front end of 455-705 arriving from the south with the boxier end of 455-868, complete with roof-mounted horns arriving from the north. The unit's refurbishment, which was carried out at Bournemouth, opened up the vestibule area, added some perch seats and lots more handrails so that a standing commuter can at least have a more comfortable ride. As well as the recycled 508 coaches, a lot of the original traction equipment was reused from the 4 subunits. This is now being replaced with AC traction packages at Wimbledon Depot. 455-732 was the initial prototype, and conversion began on 455-870 in April 2015. Once these units have been tested, the rest of the fleet will be converted at Eastleigh. Even more recycling within 455-913, as the unit's motor second, the third coach in the formation, was formerly a Class 210 driving vehicle. The 458s, or 4 JOPs, were introduced by South West Trains in 1998 and were initially a disaster, and the whole lot were nearly returned to the manufacturer at Alston. But reliability improvements over the next few years turned the unreliable duckling into, well, mechanically speaking, a swan. Originally intended for use on the Alton services, the 458 soon moved on to the Reading workings and the Ascot to Guildford shuttles. But now they have settled down into patterns on the Weybridge and Windsor circuits. In 2010, the fleet was refurbished at Bournemouth with new seats and tables, as well as repainting and fitting new information screens. But the 458 story didn't end there. With 8 mechanically similar 8-car Class 460s sitting around gathering dust, Horsebrook Leasing took the opportunity to play unit Tetris and break up the 460 sets and rebuild and reuse the coaches to make the 5-car 458-5s. However, South West Trains' desire to become a 10-coach railway does not stop with rebuilding 5-car units. They have also acquired the fleet of 24 2-car Class 456 units. These trains are being used to boost a 4-car 455 setup to 6 cars, or 2 units being added to make 8 cars. South West Trains are also trialling 2 Class 455s and a Class 456 to make a 10-car train. You may be forgiven for thinking we've slotted this shot of 456022 into the wrong section, as it is still in southern colours. But this is also a South West train. Note the southern branding has been removed. Green units like 456 numbers 9 and 5 are deployed out of the capital on the Guildford to Ascot circuit, with 3 pairs of units being required for these workings. They spend their days shuttling along the 20 miles of track to Ascot. 456-001 passes Pink's Hill. Quite often they pass the odd First Great Western working from Reading to Gatwick Airport on their journey. They are also used to strengthen services up to 8 cars. This enables South West Trains to release 4-car 455s for other duties. For many years, proposals have been put forward for a unifying rail operation in London. In 2006, Transport for London started taking over some of the metro routes and began rebuilding what it called London's new train set in 2007. London Overground is a simple operation with only one type of EMU, the Class 378 Capital Star. Built at Bombardier in Derby, there are currently 2 subclasses of these units, with the 378/1 being DC only and the 378/2 being dual voltage. 20 378-1s were ordered as 4-coach units for services on the East London Line and South London Line, and they replaced older underground trains that were running on these routes at the time. Although DC only, they have the necessary recess in the roof and gaps in the train covers to fit the 25 kV equipment should it be required in the future. The 378-2s were originally ordered as 24 378-0s, but were renumbered around 2010 when a 4th vehicle was added to the units. An additional 13 units were built from the outset as 4-coach trains. Both types are part of the Electrostar family, but are branded Capital Stars, mainly because of their open urban interior. The Capital Star units were officially unveiled to the public at Willesden Junction in July of 2009. Although sharing a large part of their design with the Class 376 Electrostars, they vary in a few subtle and a few not so subtle ways. As with the 376, the doors of the units are of the sliding type, rolling into a recess within the bodywork. This differs from the Electrostars, which have the plug door. It's an aerodynamic sacrifice, but these units are not high-speed trains.
Weymouth Road and Clapham Junction, platform 1 for the 1506 London Overground.
They have a maximum speed of 75 miles per hour, but are geared for acceleration, which is used to great effect on the network. Some stations are only a couple of miles apart.
06 London Overground service to Clapham Junction, calling at Clapham High Street, Weymouth Road and Clapham Junction.
In addition, some of the gradients are quite excessive. The units have end connections, but these are emergency escape routes rather than a gangway route between units. The biggest difference between Capital Stars and any other mainline unit is the interior. The unit has longitudinal seating throughout its length, and intra-unit gangways that are 3/4 the width of the unit. This allows a view through the train from one end to the other. It also means there is very little seating, with only about 35 seats per carriage. But these are designed for short distance commuting journeys rather than distance. The success of the Overground network has required expansion, and to allow for this, 57 additional carriages were ordered to strengthen the 4-car trains to 5-car trains. The new carriages, which are still being delivered from Derby as we make this programme, are currently vinyled in the style of a half-unwrapped parcel. This will be removed at some point and the livery returned to Overground standard white, orange and blue. The Overground network consists of 4 main traffic routes. The North London line between Richmond, Clapham Junction and Stratford, the East London routes between Highbury and Islington to New Cross, West Croydon, the Watford DC lines from Euston. The 4th route is the Gospel Oak to Barking line, but this is currently operated by Class 172 diesel multiple units and is outside the scope of this programme. However, the line is earmarked for 25 kV overhead electrification in the near future, which will see the end of the 172s. The Overground network boasts the newest section of third rail lines. The line between Peckham and Surrey Quays has been disused since the closure in 1911, but it was rebuilt and reopened in December 2012, especially for the Overground network. Clapham Junction is the terminus for trains heading clockwise from Highbury and Islington or anti-clockwise from Stratford, and units can often be seen arriving or departing in parallel, such as the intensity of the London Overground service. London Overground has grown from the ashes and embers of previous London transport schemes. It has developed into a modern transport network that will continue to expand and grow to meet the demands of London's rail commuters. Southern is the name for the train operating company that runs a central franchise in the south. Operating from London Bridge and London Victoria, services work out from Hastings in the east to Portsmouth in the west. There is also a route between Milton Keynes and South Croydon using the West London line down from Willesden via Kensington. Also, since 2008, the Gatwick Express franchise has been merged into the Southern franchise, although it retains its own branding. In July 2015, Southern will be merged into Govia's Thameslink Southern Great Northern franchise, or TSGN, which will see it grouped with Thameslink and Great Northern. It will then become the largest franchise on the UK railway. There is a range of third rail traction on Southern books. Class 313s, 377s and 455s for the Southern brands, and Class 4425 Wes units for the Gatwick Express and associated Brighton services. The 313s essentially work the East and West Coastway lines from their base at Brighton. They are now amongst the oldest units still working today, having been built in 1976. Southern's 377 fleet includes all 7 of the subclasses of Electrostar. However, the 3775s are on sublease to Thameslink. Not surprisingly, the Electrostar units can be found pretty much anywhere on the Southern network outside of the smaller London branch lines. The Class 455 fleet operates exclusively on the suburban London metro routes and will be rarely seen outside the suburbs. These units are also quite old, having been introduced to the Southern region in 1982. The Class 4425 Wes units are the traction of choice for the Gatwick Express trains. They replaced the 460 Junipers in 2012. The core route for Southern's traffic is the 50-mile London-Brighton main line, with all the operators' various services using at least part of the route for their journey. The 377s make up the bulk of Southern's fleet, with over 200 units on their books. The units are allocated to either Selhurst in South London, or to Brighton Lovers Walk on the south coast, which 377462 is about to pass with a working bound for London Victoria. The depot is empty, aside from the solitary shunter. All the units are either inside the buildings or out in service, getting into place for the evening peak. The units stable all over the south of England between duties. 377-106 approaches journey's end at Tunbridge, with a service from Redhill. 377-303 waits in the yard between turns. But for the most part, the units spend their time speeding their way between the coast and London. In the rural areas, the express trains will call at the intermediate stations. 377-157 has just called at Sussex, which is usually the last call before the terminus at Brighton. Although some Class 1 expresses will also call at Preston Park on services from Littlehampton to the west. About 20 miles north of the coast, the line starts to get busier. The 2 tracks expand to 4 at 3 bridges just to the south of Gatwick Airport. This Southern 377s run alongside one another, heading for the capital. Such is the intensity of traffic in the area, a 7th platform was recently added at Gatwick Airport Station on the downside. This will allow more through traffic to head south. With Gatwick Express and Thameslink vying for more pass, and with the new depot at 3 bridges nearing completion, the line will only get busier over the next few years. A little further to the north at South Croydon, things get even busier, with around 60 trains booked to pass during an hour in the evening peak. Traffic for the branch line out to Uckfield and the inner metro routes to Caterham and Tatton Corner also add to the mix. It's here the Class 455 start to appear. The Southern Class 455s were refurbished in 2003, with bodywork and seating being the main areas of concern. At this time, the end gangways were also plated over. The Tatton and Corner services terminate at London Bridge during off-peak hours. But Southern also runs services to Tunbridge from the terminus, as well as inner city workings round to London Victoria. Victoria is also a major terminus for Southern, with services working out to most of the destinations, such as Epsom Down, Brighton, Tonbridge, Guildford, Caterham, Eastbourne and Portsmouth. Southern is also the main user of the Southeastern set of platforms at Clapham Junction, although some South West trains do also stop on this side. But between them, the 377s and 455s operate most of the Southern London commuter traffic. The other type of traction on the books is the 313s. These venerable old units will celebrate their 40th birthday in February 2016, making them the oldest class on the network today. Following refurbishment at Wolverton Works, the 313s were moved to Southern from London Overground, once the Capital Stars arrived in 2010. They operate under the Southern Coastway brand, and the units work short distance local services from Brighton to destinations such as Littlehampton, Seaford, Bognor Regis and Portsmouth. These trains operate a local rather than peak hour service, meaning they operate well into the night. 313-211 heads to Littlehampton at Ford Station.
Train and the platform. Mind the gap. The train now standing at platform 1 is the 2050 Southern service to Littlehampton. Calling Littlehampton only.
In the other direction, 313-208 heads empty to Bognor. The 313s were the first unit capable of running on both third rail and overhead power, a requirement for their initial role on the Great Northern Drayton Park to Moorgate underground section, a role in which a handful of them still operate today. But when refurbished for use by Southern, the units had their pantographs removed, so now can only work on third rail lines, which, on the south coast, doesn't really present any kind of problem. The immediate future for the class is assured, as they will be retained when Southern is consumed into the TSGN franchise. So for now, the 313s will continue with their coastal roles.
Will now arrive at 1936.
As well as old units, the Southern network enjoyed some old infrastructure too. In early 2015, there was still a number of signal boxes and semaphore signalling in operation, but sadly their days are numbered. Our cameras caught these views on the last few days of operation at Berwick Box. 2 days later, the box was closed and control was handed over to the new £20 million Railways Operations Centre at Three Bridges, which will eventually take over all the local signal boxes and will control an area from London Victoria and London Bridge stations along the length of the Brighton Main Line to Brighton and the south coast, and large areas either side in both Sussex and Surrey.
There is one coming in on this side, yeah? Yeah. What I was going to say, can you find that cable? Open up and do it from here. Corey, imagine we had 2 pairs of steps, that'd be wonderful.
Gatwick Express is also slowly disappearing from the railway landscape. Introduced in 1984, the route operated a 15-minute non-stop Victoria to Gatwick service. This route has been operated by various traction types over the years, and in December 2008 the former Wessex Electric Class 442s took over from the 460 Junipers. They are a late 1980s design and were the last units to be made with the Mark III style of coach. They were also made using an abundant amount of plastic within the interiors, which led to the nickname Plastic Pigs. In December 2008 the Gatwick Express service was extended south to Brighton, so now units just carry Express branding, as some commuters can be easily confused. So for now, the 442 units continue their daily 26-mile shuttle with the occasional foray to the coast. They are earmarked for replacement on the Gatwick Express service by newer Class 387-2 Electrostars. Thameslink is part of the Govia franchise that operates primarily between Bedford and Brighton. It uses the route known as the Thameslink Core, which is soon to become the busiest section of railway in Europe. There are currently three types of units in operation by Thameslink: 319s, 375s and 387s. The 319s are a product of the former British Rail Engineering Limited works in York. The class was constructed in two subclasses, 3190s and 3191s. Externally, the 3191s only differ as they have different pantographs. Inside, the seating is different, with first class and 2+3 seating in second class. The 377s are 4-coach units and have been on lease from Southern since 2009. There are two subclasses, 3772s and 3775s, which are dual voltage variants of the Electrostar family. The 387s are still being built as we make this programme. Also members of the Electrostar family, they look similar to the 377s, but they can operate at 110 miles per hour on the 25 kilovolt overhead. Their introduction into service began on the 8th of December 2014. Let's take a look at Thameslink and its operations in the south. Starting in Brighton. This is the southernmost point on the Thameslink network and has been the primary destination for the operator since the route opened from Bedford in 1988. There are 68 stations served and the route is about 140 miles. The 377s in the fleet are currently in various liveries. Here, 377517 is still in First Capital Connect colours, and the second unit, 377207, is in Southern colours. Presumably, both will eventually be re-liveries into the TSGN colours. The 377s are not the newest units on the Thameslink books. That honour falls to the Class 387s, which are still being introduced as we make the programme. As the 387s come into service, they are replacing the older Class 319s, which in turn are being cascaded out to Northern Rail to operate their Manchester to Liverpool via Newton and Willows route. The 387 is the newest member of the Electrostar family, again built in Derby by Bombardier. They are a modified version of the Class 379 Stansted electric unit, with upgraded software to allow them to run at 110 mph on the 25 kV overhead lines. And of course they have all the third rail equipment fitted. Apart from the lower light on the front and the colours, there is very little to tell a 377 and a 387 apart. Heading further north, we begin to see more and more Class 319s. This unit, seen at South Croydon, is heading for Brighton, but their use this far south is becoming rarer. The 377s are still to be found on the mainline route. The 3775s, numbered 1 to 23, are subleased to Thameslink and will remain in operation. The 3772s, numbered 7 to 15, are on short-term loan from Southern and will be returned when all of the new units are in traffic. East Croydon is usually the last stop for northbound workings before entering the Thameslink core. With services currently either heading for Bedford or to London Bridge. In 2015, the entirety of London Bridge Station and surrounding track work is one massive building site. The new Borough Viaduct, just to the west of the terminus platforms, was completed in the autumn of 2012 and will carry Charing Cross trains westwards, and the existing lines are being rationalised for the Thameslink services, allowing each to operate side by side, but completely independent of each other. Whilst all this work goes on, Thameslink services are being diverted off their usual routes and round the back roads of London. .319s have provided many years of service to the route, with some of the units now over 25 years old. And while still in frontline service, the future demands of the intense Thameslink core means new units are needed to replace the 319s. As the ousted 319s move to Northern Rail, they will get new paintwork and refreshed interiors. The Thameslink 319s currently have a number of unique liveries. 319443 is carrying the new Thameslink colours. A number of 319s have been revinyled with advertising liveries, including this one. It extols the virtues of Switzerland to passengers who may well have just got off a plane at Gatwick. Some units, like 319214, also still carry the colours of their former operator Southern. As well as First Capital Connect branding. From time to time, there is also the need to divert the diversions. 319-428 approaches London Victoria with a Sunday Sevenoaks working that would usually terminate at London Blackfriars. Historically, Thameslink services will run to East Croydon and then continue north through Sydenham, Brockley, New Cross, London Bridge, and diverge off at Metropolitan Junction to Blackfriars Junction to reach the Thameslink core. With the rebuilding works reducing platform and track capacity at London Bridge, services cannot pass through and reach the core until the summer of 2018. This means services now have to run via Crystal Palace, Tulse Hill, Loughborough Junction and Elephant and Castle to reach Blackfriars and beyond. Blackfriars' original station was the second casualty of the Thameslink rebuild. The first was the original terminus of Holborn Viaduct. The original open platform structure has been completely rebuilt, widened and lengthened, in an enclosed glass structure that can accommodate 12-coach trains. It has 4,400 solar panels on the roof to cover half the station's power requirements. The station now spans the width of the River Thames, with exits on either bank. However, the Thameslink rebuilding programme is not just about longer trains, it is about more of those longer trains per hour. Currently, the line is running about 13 or 14 trains per hour in each direction during the peak, which is about one train every 4 minutes. The plan is to increase this to 24 trains per hour, or one every 2.5 minutes, once all the works are complete in the summer of 2018. This will also include trains from Cambridge and Kings Lynn, once the canal tunnels built during the construction of HS1 and St Pancras International opens. The line north of Farringdon operated by 25 kilovolt overheads, and the line south of City Thameslink being 750 volt third rail, there has to be a changeover point. For southbound work-ins, this is usually performed at Farringdon. A train will work in on 25 kV, then its shoes will be lowered and make contact with the third rail, the pantograph will drop, and the unit will switch from the 25 kV to 750 volt operation and continue its journey. Likewise, northbound workings usually change at City Thameslink and will stop using 750 volt DC before they depart Farringdon. The evolution does not end there. Thameslink also have on order over 100 Class 700 D0 City units to operate on the wider TSGN franchise to new destinations such as Cambridge and Peterborough. These units are under construction in Germany, and the first is due to reach UK soil in the summer of 2015. They are being built as 8 and 12 car units, and they will be the first mainline trains to feature automatic operation, which will give control of the train to the onboard computer for the journey through the core. The entire fleet should be in service by 2018 and will serve Thameslink for another 20 years. Southeastern operates one of the busiest commuter networks in the UK, with over 2,200 train services carrying 570,000 passengers a day. There are 3 main traction types operated: networkers, electrostars and javelins. The networkers are divided into 2 classes: the 4-car 465 and the 2-car 466. Both types operate in multiple and can often be seen making up anywhere from 2 to 10 coach trains. The electrostars are broken into 2 classes of unit: 375 for mainline routes and 376 for suburban or high-density metro routes. The 375s are 3 or 4 car units and 376s are 5 car trains, and although compatible for multiple working, are rarely seen operating together. The Class 395 Javelin trains are dual voltage. They are designed to run on the high-speed line alongside the Eurostars, although their maximum speed is only 140 miles an hour. And like all other third rail traction, they are limited to 100 miles an hour when operating on the third rail. So this is Southeastern. During 1997, the then franchise operator Connex began looking for a manufacturer to build a fleet of EMUs for the Southeastern franchise to replace the aged slam door stock. After tendering, Adtrans in Derby was selected to assemble 30 new 4-car electric train sets, with the traction motors, train control and communications equipment being made in Västerås, Sweden. Recesses are built into the pantograph trailer second coaches, or PTS, of all the units, but only the 3756s actually have pantographs fitted. In 1998, HSBC Rail provided the finance for all 30 as yet unbuilt train sets from Adtrans, which was now called Bombardier. These sets were then leased back to Connex via some creative accounting. With that in place, a further order for 30 3-car sets to replace the 4 SIG units was placed. The first unit, 375001, was delivered to Ashford in April 1999, and after 200,000 miles of acceptance testing was carried out, the unit was accepted into traffic. Construction on the next batch of units then began at the beginning of 2000. In the summer of 2001, the 375s began regular passenger workings on Victoria to Ramsgate turns. Subsequently, Connex placed 2 more orders for 228 and 180 carriages, bringing the total vehicle number up to 618. On delivery, some of the original subclasses of the fleet were initially fitted with tight-lock couplers. The units have all now been retrofitted with Delna couplings, standardising the fleet. The class is equipped with selective door opening, or SDO. This allows certain doors to not be opened. This system is linked to a computer that uses GPS satellites and track balances to tell the train where it is. The computer checks to see if the train fits within the platform. If not, the rear doors are not enabled. This safety feature stops passengers unwittingly exiting the train where there is not a platform. The units operate the Class 1 service from Victoria to Ashford, Canterbury, Dover Priory, Faversham, Gillingham and Ramsgate, as well as from Charing Cross to Tunbridge Wells, Hastings, Dover Priory and Canterbury. Some of these workings are scheduled dividers, so for an example, an 8-car unit runs to Ashford and then splits to 2 4-car units for different destinations. Also, the 3753s operate the Medway Valley line between Tonbridge and Strood. The Electrostars are undergoing a midlife refurbishment, which will involve repainting to blue, recarpeting and moving the first-class section to the middle of the train. The Networker units were born out of Network Southeast's desire to replace slam door stock with a closely related family of units. At the time of inception, the units were state-of-the-art and had thyristor-controlled 3-phase AC traction and bodywork constructed from welded aluminium. The Class 465s were built by GC, or Metro Camel, Brell and ABB. The first was handed over to Network Southeast in December 1991. However, it took several years for them to enter service. Infrastructure developments, platform lengthening, power supply upgrades, as well as driver-only training delayed progress. However, the delays allowed for an alteration to the Metcam contract, and part of the 465 order was then changed to 43 2-car units. Nowadays, they are Southeastern's short to medium distance unit, used on Class 2 passenger workings around London's metro routes and branch lines, such as Sheerness and Bromley North, plus some of the Kent coastal routes. There are 147 Class 465 units, and these are broken down into 4 subclasses. They are allocated to Slade Green in South East London, and they are all owned by Eversholt Rail or Angel Trains, and then leased to Southeastern. Likewise, the 43 Class 466 units are also allocated to Slade Green and are owned by Angel Trains. The 2 classes work side by side on a daily basis. The 465s, although identically specified, differ slightly between the subclasses. The 465Os and 465-1s are products of ABB, whereas the 465-2s and 465-9s are the Metcam units. From the outside, at platform level, there is little to tell the units apart. The ABB units have air vents in the body side between the cantrail stripe and the windows. The underframes on the unit's outer motor coaches on a Metcam unit are boxed in, but they are exposed on an ABB unit. This formation is a Metcam Class 466, followed by a Metcam 465, still with Connex yellow doors, and an ABB 465 on the rear in the current Southeastern colours. The 466s only tend to venture out on their own on branch line workings. 466042 is on the 45 minutes back and forth shuttle between Sittingbourne and Sheerness on Sea. Otherwise they are paired up with 465s to boost capacity during the day. 466031 is paired up with 465238 arriving at Bromley South. Networker units are fitted with a tight lock coupler which consists of a buckeye knuckle at the top and with electrical connection below. This type of coupler is common amongst second generation of electrical multiple units and even has a version on the gangway connections of the Mark IV passenger stock. The 465s operate Southeastern short to medium distance trips. The 465-9s tend to escape furthest from London operating on Class 2 passenger workings. But most of the time the units just roll around the overly complicated trackwork of London. 465183 approaches Lewisham. Slade Green is the primary depot for London Metro units. It is base for all the 465s, 466s and 376s. In 1990, the depot underwent a £20 million rebuild for the arrival of the networker units. It now looks after most of the day-to-day running of the networker and 376 fleets. But whilst most of the major work is carried out at Slade Green, some work can also be carried out at Ramsgate. The 376s were also ordered by Connex in 2004 to replace the networkers on the inner suburban workings. The trains were designed to provide short distance travel for lots of passengers. In the 10 coach formation they offer 100 more seats than a 10 car networker, but this space comes at a price, with the lack of toilets and more space given over to standing. During the peak, the train's high-density layout is well utilised, with just over 430 proper seats available in the unit. The off-peak period gives us a chance to see the massive handrails and perch seats. This design is aimed to allow as many people as possible to get from A to B. The door vestibule area is wider than other trains to allow ease of movement for passengers to get on and off. and the doors themselves are wider than the standard Electrostar in an attempt to reduce dwell times at stations. They are also designed without end gangways, so it's not possible to walk between units. However, this does allow for a few extra feet of passenger space within. The introduction of the 376s allowed the 465s and 466s to be cascaded out to longer distance commuter workings.
Calling at Hither Green, Rose Farm, Elmstead Woods, Chislehurst, Kent Wood, and Orpington. Next train.
In another nod to getting more people on the train, the units have no first-class accommodation, unlike other commuter units in the Southeastern fleet. Although radically different at the front, the units are almost mechanically and electrically identical to the rest of the Electrostar family, with even things like the pressure ventilation equipment being put in the same space occupied by the aircon on the other units, should the need to change arise in the future. Given the high-density nature of the units and the lack of toilet facilities, the type does not stray off their diagram workings, and will only usually be found working out of Cannon Street or Charing Cross. Workings only go out as far as the outer London suburbs or the fringes of Kent, with very few units coming out at the weekend. Obviously, the units are busiest during the weekday peak hours, moving passengers quickly and efficiently. But Southeastern is not just about the slow speed moving of commuters. The jewel in the crown is the Hitachi-made 6-car 140 mph Class 395 unit, for use on High Speed 1 domestic services. The origins of the class lay somewhere deep within the bid for the 2012 Summer Olympics Transport and Infrastructure section. The idea was laid out for a high-speed Olympic shuttle service to run between St Pancras and Ebbsfleet, calling at Stratford for the Olympic Park, with up to 12 trains per hour running the service in the evenings. From this, the units gained the name Javelins. Once the Olympics were over, the units settled into providing a Kent commuter service that ambles around the countryside and then zooms the last section from Ebbsfleet into St Pancras in an impressive 17 minutes. They make the 23-mile journey at an average speed of over 80 miles per hour, which includes stopping at Stratford. But, for the most part, services run at a more sedate speed. The routes worked are from St Pancras out to Ebbsfleet on HS1, and from there on to Faversham, Margate, with occasional services to either Maidstone West or Sandwich. There is also a circular route taking in Gravesend, Strood, Sandwich, Dover and Ashford, before belting back up HS1 to St Pancras. The changeover from 25 kV to third rail happens at Ebbsfleet International, usually whilst the trains are stopped. This is where the Javelins divert off HS1 onto classic routes. This view shows the last section of overheads at Ebbsfleet before HS1 becomes a classic line at Springhead Junction. Units often run in pairs, making up longer 12-coach trains, with the trains combining at places like Ashford or St Pancras. The 395 employs a Scharfenberg coupling system, which is usually hidden under the front-end dome of the unit's streamlined nose.
If we can get on, please. Moving.
The driver initiates the procedure. The dome peels out sideways and then retracts back into the body shell, leaving the coupling now proud at the front of the unit, ready to join with another 395. The units can only operate in multiple with class members, although during the testing period one was coupled to a 375 for safety purposes. The seating in the units is all standard class, with 2+2 commuter-style seats throughout the train. The line out of Dover presented the final safety hurdle for the units prior to their introduction. Previously, only vehicles with corridor ends were allowed through the narrow Shakespeare Tunnel, as this type of train could be evacuated from each end. As Javelins do not have end connections, the solution was to slew the tracks to one side, and with the unit's doors being designed to slide open within the bodywork of the unit, this problem was overcome. Another Javelin heads for the tunnel, concluding our roundup of DC EMUs and their operations in the southeast.